They told me I didn't exist. Not in words, but on paper in a government database in the eyes of the law. I was 16 the first time I tried to apply for a work permit. I'd found a tutoring gig online, just a few hours a week, math and English for younger kids. The kind of thing you need a social security number for. I filled out the form, clicked submit, and got an error message. Record not found. Contact your local SSA office. At first I thought it was a glitch, a typo in my name maybe. But when I got to the office, waited 2 hours under flickering fluorescent lights and peeling posters that said things like, "Your identity matters." The woman behind the counter scanned my info, frowned, and asked me to wait again. When she returned, she had a manager with her. They sat me down and said my case was flagged. That, according to their records, I had passed away 2 years ago. Officially, I was dead. The words didn't land. Not at first. I laughed softly, awkwardly. I thought it was a mistake, that maybe they'd mixed me up with someone else. My name's not that common, but still. The man looked at me, no smile, no pity, and handed me a piece of paper. A certified copy of a death certificate. My name, my birthday. Cause of death complications from a car accident. I didn't understand. I wasn't in any accident. Not a serious one anyway. 2 years ago, I'd tripped on my way to school, scraped my head against a mailbox, and passed out. I was taken to a hospital. Overnight stay. Mild concussion. The next morning, my parents didn't come to get me. I was told they'd signed temporary guardianship over to the state. They had financial difficulties and couldn't provide safe care. I was moved to a foster home. Then another, and then eventually to Haven Ridge, a transitional shelter in Cedar County. That was my accident. Now I knew what it really was. They hadn't just given up custody. They'd written me off, filed my death certificate, declared me gone. And here's the twist I couldn't have imagined. In 1,000 worst-case daydreams, my sister got a scholarship. A full ride. One of those impossible-to-get foundation awards for students who overcome profound family loss. My sister Lacey, the golden girl. At Haven Ridge, most kids didn't talk about their pasts unless they had to. I didn't either. My file just said parental abandonment, non-emergency medical. Most staff didn't pry, but Marcus, he did. Not right away. He was the only one there who called us by our first names, like we mattered, like we weren't just numbers rotating through cots. Marcus wasn't a regular shelter employee. He wore cuffed button-downs and carried a leather-bound notebook, old school. Word was he used to be a lawyer until something happened and he ended up here. Volunteering, quiet, observing. One day when he found me staring at the edge of the basketball court instead of playing, he asked, "Ever feel like someone hit erase on your whole life?" I looked at him and I nodded. So I told him everything. How my parents always told Lacey she was the blessing we prayed for, while I was the tough one, the resilient girl, the old soul who doesn't need much. How Lacey got a new MacBook for her 14th birthday, while I got a secondhand Kindle with someone else's name still etched on the case. How my mom used to say, "Don't make a fuss, Eliza. Let Lacey have her moment." But nothing prepared me for this. I didn't even feel angry yet. I felt weightless. Like a page unstapled, fluttering around with no binder to hold me in place. Marcus took the certificate from my hand, scanned it slowly, then said, "This isn't a clerical error. This was filed intentionally. Witness signature? County clerk seal?" "Why would they do that?" I asked, my voice hollow. He paused. "Some foundations give preferential awards for students who've lost siblings, especially those with compelling trauma narratives." I blinked. "You're saying they declared me dead for the application?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just folded the paper and placed it gently on the table like it was fragile glass. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was grieving, but because something was clicking into place. It was like watching a film backwards and finally understanding all the foreshadowing I'd missed. The way my mom cried extra loud at church the year I was gone. The Facebook post from my dad with a photo of a candle and the caption, "Cherish your children." We never know how long we have. There were hundreds of comments, all sympathy, all praising their strength through sorrow. And Lacey. with her speech at the statewide essay contest titled How Loss Taught Me Gratitude. I thought I'd felt pain before. When I got shuffled between homes, when I fell asleep hungry, when I woke up wondering if I was just broken beyond repair. But this was deeper. A cut made not with malice, but with calculation. They didn't just leave me behind, they erased me. For points. I stared at the wall above my cot until the sun bled through the tiny window. Then I sat up, turned to Marcus, who was quietly making instant coffee at the desk corner, and said, "Can I fight this?" He didn't smile, but something shifted in his eyes, a kind of steady glint. "Do you want justice, Eliza?" he asked. "No," I said, voice steady. "I want truth." And that was the moment it started, not with rage, but with clarity. Marcus opened his notebook and said, "Then we'll need to make them remember you're alive." Marcus didn't waste time. The very next day, he brought me to the back office at Haven Ridge, technically off limits to residents. But Marcus had a key and a way of walking like he belonged wherever he stepped. The room smelled like old books and peppermint gum, and one of the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like an irritated wasp. He slid a laptop toward me. "Let's start at the source," he said. "If they filed a death certificate, there'll be a paper trail. We follow the trail." We searched for hours, county clerk records, probate court documents, archived obituaries. I didn't even know what half the terms meant. I just followed Marcus's lead and kept clicking, scrolling, reading. Then we found it. Filed under my legal name, Eliza Marie Boone. Death certificate issued September 14th, 2 years ago, filed by Mark Boone, my father. Accompanied by a sworn statement from my mother, Catherine, confirming the unrecoverable nature of the accident and her emotional unfitness to appear in person. It was signed off by someone named Leonard Price, a notary who apparently had worked for Cedar County's records office before retiring early that same year. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Well, this just got interesting." I stared at the screen. It felt like looking at my own gravestone. Except I was breathing. My hands were shaking a little, but not from fear, from fury. "What now?" I asked. "We gather more," he said simply. The next few days were a blur of controlled chaos. Marcus contacted a pro bono legal aid clinic he used to work with. They agreed to discreetly review my case. Meanwhile, I requested my medical records from the hospital I'd been at 2 years ago. The form asked for proof of identity. I sent them the only thing I had, my old school ID, and a typed note from the shelter director confirming my current residence and guardianship status. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived at Haven Ridge. Inside were discharge papers, 1 night mild concussion, fully recovered. No fatal injuries, no extended hospitalization, no cause of death, just 1 line, patient discharged into temporary state custody per parental request. I held the page up to the light like it might reveal something else, something human. It didn't. Just bureaucracy. Cold, quiet betrayal in black and white. And yet, as cruel as it all felt, it was also proof. Proof they knew I was alive when they signed that death certificate. One night, while the others were asleep, I sat on the porch steps outside the shelter wrapped in a blanket someone had donated faded sunflowers and frayed edges. I stared at the moon and whispered to no one in particular. Why wasn't I enough? Footsteps approached. It was Marcus. He didn't say anything for a while. Just sat beside me, passing me a cup of instant cocoa. "You know," he said after a moment, "some people think power looks like shouting, but real power. It's when you know the truth and let it speak for itself." I nodded, not because I understood, but because I wanted to. 2 days later, we got something unexpected. An email reply from Leonard Price, the notary who'd signed my death paperwork. Marcus had reached out with a carefully worded message, just enough to catch attention without raising alarms. Leonard's message was short. "I no longer work for the county. I remember the Boone case. There were irregularities. I'm willing to meet, discreetly." That single sentence cracked something open. We met Leonard at a local diner just off the highway, the kind of place where the linoleum floors are always sticky and the jukebox only plays old country songs. He was in his late 60s, hair like silver wire, nervous eyes darting behind thick glasses. Marcus ordered coffee for us all, and then Leonard leaned in. "I don't normally talk about past clients," he said, "but this one bothered me. Still does?" He explained that when Mark and Catherine Boone came in, they were overly rehearsed. The story didn't track no body, no police report, no obituary, just a vague reference to medical trauma and family grief. When Leonard hesitated to sign, they told him the death certificate was necessary to process a private educational grant for their surviving daughter. "They said they couldn't bear to talk about it again," Leonard muttered. "Said it was too painful." He shook his head. I believed them. I shouldn't have. Then he passed us something across the table, a scanned copy of the original affidavit they gave him marked confidential. There, in Catherine's handwriting, was the phrase, "The accident permanently removed Eliza from our family structure." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money or opportunity. It was about choice. They chose to erase me, to rewrite the narrative. And for 2 years it worked, but not anymore. Back at Haven Ridge, Marcus sat me down again. "You have enough for a complaint," he said. "Maybe even a case. But this isn't just about going to court." "I know," I replied. "It's about being seen." So I started writing. Late at night, on a donated Chromebook, I wrote every detail I could remember. Hospital smells, the silence after they left, the first night in the foster home, the birthdays they never called. I wrote it all, not for revenge, but for record. And then one night I clicked send. It was an email addressed to the Elias Worthington Foundation, the private organization that had awarded Lacey her full-ride scholarship 2 years ago. Subject line: urgent scholarship awarded under false premise. Attached were my records, the death certificate, the discharge summary, the affidavit. And one quiet line at the end: "I am Eliza Boone. I am not dead. I am still here." I didn't sleep that night. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. The next morning, there was no reply, nor the next. But on the third day, I got a simple response. "Thank you for your message. We are reviewing your documentation. Further correspondence to follow." And that's when I knew the silence was over. The email from the Elias Worthington Foundation sat like a spark in my inbox, small, quiet, but full of potential. They were reviewing my case. That meant it had been seen. For the first time since my life got buried under forged paperwork and fake grief, someone outside the system had looked directly at the lie and decided it deserved attention. I didn't expect what came next. 3 days later, I was called into the main office at Haven Ridge. I thought it was just another intake update, maybe a housing form to renew, but when I walked in, Marcus was already there. He gave me a slight nod, then gestured to a woman seated beside him. Her suit was gray and pressed sharp. Her eyes looked like they'd scanned 1,000 resumes before breakfast. Eliza Marcus said carefully, "This is Ms. Dana Holt. She's with the Worthington Foundation's Compliance Review Board." My mouth went dry. Dana stood and offered her hand. "I'm here off the record. I'd like to talk to you, ask a few questions. Nothing formal yet." She asked about everything. Where I'd been the past 2 years, who had custody, what the timeline looked like from the moment I entered the hospital to when I ended up at Haven Ridge. I tried to stay calm, keep my voice steady, but at one point when she asked how I found out I'd been declared dead, my voice cracked. "I went to apply for a part-time job," I said. "Just tutoring kids." That's when I learned I didn't legally exist anymore. She didn't blink, just jotted it down. "And you believe the scholarship was awarded under false circumstances?" "I don't believe it," I said. "I know it." At the end, she stood slowly and looked at Marcus. "We'll be conducting an internal audit. Quietly, for now. If this pans out the way it appears, there will be consequences." That was the moment it stopped feeling like a bad dream and started feeling like a chess game. Over the next week, whispers spread. I wasn't sure how, but people at Haven Ridge started treating me differently. Like I was some kind of live wire, dangerous maybe, or just powerful. Even Ms. Carver, the head coordinator who'd once told me I should stop chasing ghosts, asked me if I needed more time in the computer lab. I spent my nights reading policy documents. I combed through the Scholarship Foundation's guidelines, highlighted phrases like integrity, verified hardship, truthful application required. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't my life. Then one afternoon, Marcus walked into the lounge and handed me a folder. "You need to see this." Inside were printed screenshots, public records, social media updates, a press release. Lacey had been invited to speak at a university gala. Topic: resilience in the face of grief. I stared at the screen. My own sister standing on a stage, likely telling a crowd about how she'd lost her sibling and turned that pain into academic ambition. "She's using my grave," I whispered. "No," Marcus said. "She's using the lie your parents built. That doesn't make it yours." But it felt like mine. All of it. Like I was watching someone else live the life that was stolen from me, like I'd been exiled from my own story. Marcus leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" "I want her to hear my name," I said. Out loud, where she can't pretend I never existed. So I made a plan. The gala was public, open to donors, faculty, alumni, and press. Lacey would be speaking at the end, closing out the event. The Elias Foundation was sponsoring it, one of their flagship programs. Marcus helped me get a ticket under a guest name. I borrowed a blazer from the donation closet, wore my cleanest jeans, and tried not to tremble as I walked into that auditorium. Everything smelled like expensive perfume and polished wood. I found a seat near the back, hands folded tightly in my lap. When Lacey walked on stage, the applause was immediate. She looked exactly how I remembered: hair curled, perfect posture, voice clear and confident. "I stand here today because of loss," she said, eyes glistening. "Because I had to learn how to live with the absence of someone I loved dearly. My sister, Eliza." My breath caught in my throat. "She was brilliant," Lacey continued. "Kind, quiet. Losing her taught me to appreciate every moment." People nodded. Someone even wiped away a tear. And I sat there alive, invisible and boiling. After the speech, the reception began. Guests mingled, wine glasses clinked, and Lacey smiled under soft golden lights, shaking hands with people who believed she was a survivor. I walked up slowly, waited until she turned. Her smile froze. "Eliza," she whispered. Her glass slipped a little. "I liked your speech," I said calmly. "Very moving. Only I don't remember dying." She blinked. Her face went pale. "How are you here?" she whispered. "I've always been here," I replied. "You all just decided to look away." Before she could answer, another voice cut in. "Ms. Boone." Dana Holt, clipboard in hand, calm, controlled. "I think we need to talk, in private." Lacey turned to her, then to me. Her voice cracked. "You don't understand." "No," I said. "You don't. But you're about to." The room they led Lacey into wasn't a police station or some dark interrogation booth. It was a sleek, soundproof side lounge just off the gala floor, plush chairs, bottled water, a faint citrus scent in the air. But it might as well have been a courtroom. Dana closed the door softly and gestured for us to sit. I stayed standing. So did Lacey. Her arms were folded, but her fingers trembled. "I don't know what this is," she said quickly. This is insane. She's been gone for years. She ran away." "No," I said. "I was abandoned. That's different." Dana pulled a folder from her bag. The Worthington Foundation logo gleamed on the corner. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Ms. Boone," she began, "the application submitted on your behalf included a death certificate for your sister, a copy we now believe to be fraudulent." Lacey scoffed. "I didn't submit anything. My parents handled it. I didn't even read the full application." "You spoke on behalf of that application at multiple fundraising events," Dana replied calmly. "You benefited directly from that narrative. If it was false, you're implicated even if you didn't type the words." Lacey looked at me like I had set her house on fire. "You don't get it," she hissed. "We couldn't afford both. You were gone. You weren't coming back. It was either me or nothing." My jaw tightened. It was never about money. It was about choice. And they chose you. Dana raised an eyebrow. "So you're confirming your parents made this decision without Eliza's knowledge or consent?" "She disappeared," Lacey shot back. "She was gone for months. No calls, no texts. We thought she was dead." "That's not true," I said. "You knew where I was. The state sent letters. Social services tried to reach out. I wasn't dead. I was inconvenient." Dana didn't blink. "We'll be launching a full review of your scholarship standing. The foundation will reach out formally with next steps. I recommend transparency going forward. It's less painful that way." Lacey opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. When I stepped back out into the gala hallway, everything looked smaller. The chandeliers, the speeches, the lies. It was all glass and gold hiding cracks underneath. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed at Haven Ridge staring at the single photo I'd kept all these years. It was old, blurry, but real. Grandmammy and a cake that read "Welcome Home." I hadn't seen her in months. Phone calls had gotten harder. She'd been dealing with memory issues and her assisted living center was hours away. But that night I called, and when she answered, her voice was soft but steady. "Did they see you?" she asked. "Yes," I said, finally. She laughed quietly. "Good. I always knew they would." The next morning, Marcus told me Dana had sent an update. The foundation had suspended the Boone Scholarship, pending legal review. Whispers were spreading on campus boards and donor forums. Lacey's photo had been pulled from the foundation's website. I thought I'd feel more triumphant. I didn't. I just felt empty. Like I'd been climbing a mountain made of bones, and now I was standing at the top with no air left to breathe. That weekend, I volunteered for a shelter breakfast run. It was raining, and the sky was the color of concrete, but I needed something, anything, to remind me the world wasn't just rot behind polished doors. I handed out eggs and pancakes to people whose stories I didn't know, but whose eyes told me enough. And in that moment, I realized the difference. I wanted to build something, not just break what had hurt me. But the world wasn't done throwing punches. On Monday, Ms. Carver pulled me aside in the hallway. She looked uncomfortable. "Eliza," she said, "we received a visitor this morning. Your father." It was like someone poured ice water down my back. "He came here." She nodded. "He asked for you, wanted to talk. I told him that wasn't appropriate unless you agreed." I didn't answer. I couldn't. "He left a letter," she added, handing me a plain envelope. I took it. My hands didn't shake, but my stomach turned. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neat handwriting, a signature I hadn't seen in years. "Eliza, we made mistakes. Your mother and I, we were afraid. We didn't know how to fix it. We thought we were doing the right thing for your sister. Maybe we were wrong. Please come home. We miss you. Dad." I read it twice. Then I folded it, tucked it back inside, and placed it in the donation bin by the front desk. Because I wasn't going home. I already was home. But as I turned away, something in the lobby caught my eye. A woman with short silver hair, faded cardigan, wide eyes full of recognition. "Grandma," I breathed. She blinked, then smiled. "Eliza," she whispered. "Is it really you?" I ran. Her arms wrapped around me tighter than I expected. Her cardigan smelled like lavender and old books, and her skin was colder than it used to be. "You've grown," she said, voice shaking. "Look at you. So tall." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Grandma, how did you get here?" She blinked. "A lady called. Said you were in trouble. I needed to see you." Her eyes flickered behind thick glasses. And that's when I noticed it, something distant, flickering just beneath the surface. She smiled at me, but it didn't quite reach. "Eliza, are you still doing piano?" I froze. "Grandma, I haven't played since I was 12. She tilted her head like that didn't make sense. No. You had your recital coming up. Remember, you were going to wear the blue dress." My stomach twisted. She was talking about a memory from years ago. I squeezed her hands gently. "Grandma, when was the last time you took your medication?" She looked down, and then her smile faded. "I don't remember." Miss Carver stepped closer. "Eliza, we've already contacted a social worker. She may need to be evaluated." "She has insurance through the state," I said quickly. "Last I checked, she was at Willow Creek Assisted. I left," Grandma said almost proudly. They locked the door too early at night. My heart cracked a little. That was just like her. Still stubborn, still free, still breaking rules for people she loved. I brought her back to Haven Ridge's common room, where she sat on the couch like it was her throne. She touched everything, the lampshade, the magazine rack, even the toaster oven, like she was memorizing textures. I made her tea while she stared at the photo wall. "That's you," she said, pointing. "Isn't it?" "Yeah," I whispered. "That's me last winter, after the tutoring awards ceremony." "You always were good with numbers," she said. "You used to count all the street lamps on the way to school?" I smiled. "You remembered that?" She nodded. Not everything. But that stuck. The social worker, a tall woman named Elaine, came by within the hour. She was kind but firm, explaining that they'd need to do a short evaluation and possibly return Grandma to her care facility unless I wanted to take over temporary guardianship. I didn't hesitate. "I'll take her," I said. "For now." Elaine looked at me. "That's a lot for someone your age. Are you sure she took me in when no one else would?" I said. "This isn't charity. It's history." That night, I moved Grandma into my room. We pushed the twin beds together so she wouldn't feel alone. I showed her where the light switch was, how the faucet worked, even where the emergency call button was. She nodded patiently through it all, but I could tell her mind kept skipping like a record trying to find its groove. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to her rummaging through the closet. "Looking for the pies," she muttered. I told the church I'd bring them by 10. I gently took her hand and led her back to bed. "No church today, Grandma," I whispered. "We're okay." She stared at me for a long second. "You're Eliza, aren't you?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm here." She relaxed. "Good. I always worried you'd disappear." The next morning, I called Willow Creek and asked about her file. They'd reported her missing, but hadn't contacted the police. "She's wandered," before the nurse said, "but never that far." They offered to send a shuttle. I said no. I wanted time. I needed it. At breakfast, Grandma sat next to one of the other girls, a recent runaway named Brielle. They laughed over cereal like old friends. "You know, Grandma said to her Eliza used to plant jelly beans in the garden. Thought they'd grow into candy trees." I groaned. "Grandma," but Brielle giggled. "That's the cutest thing I've ever heard." Later that day, I found an envelope on my bed. No stamp, no return address, inside a single sheet, typed, "Cold." "Eliza, stop the lies, stop the show, come home or everything falls apart." No name, but I didn't need one. It was them, my parents. Somehow they knew I was getting close. They were scared, and they should be, because I had just filed a formal complaint with the state attorney general's office. Fraud, neglect, false reporting of a death, every document, every proof, every text and hospital record, I'd submitted it all. Marcus had helped. Dana had offered a statement. Even Ms. Carver said she'd testify. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was building a case. And now they were panicking. I stared at the letter again. It smelled faintly like perfume. My mother's perfume. I folded it up and slipped it under the bookshelf. "You don't get to scare me anymore," I whispered. Grandma was humming in the next room. The tune was off-key but comforting, like something half-remembered. I walked over to check on her. She was staring at the open window. "Did I miss the bus?" she asked. "No," I said gently. "You're home." But in her eyes, I could see the fog creeping in again. And in my chest, a new dread was blooming. I could fight the world. I could take on the courts, the lies, the foundations. But what if I lost her before she got to see how it ended, before she could remember what she'd saved? The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. A low, measured voice came through the line. "Miss Boone, I represent the Stratton Foundation. I think we need to talk." The voice on the line was sharp but polite. "Miss Boone, I'm Rachel Linwood, Director of Outreach for the Stratton Foundation. I believe we need to clear up a few things regarding your recent correspondence." My fingers tightened around the phone. "I didn't send that letter for a reply," I said. "I just wanted the truth out there." There was a pause, then a softer tone. "And it's been received? Loud and clear, which is why I'm calling. We'd like to meet, in person." I hesitated. "Why?" "Because some things are better discussed face to face. Transparency matters, Miss Boone. And frankly, we believe your story matters." The next afternoon, I stood outside a glass building downtown, heart hammering beneath my coat. The Stratton Foundation's logo, a golden key inside a rising sun, shimmered above the door. I'd seen it for years in brochures and donation drives, never imagining I'd walk through those doors as anything more than a forgotten shadow. Rachel met me in the lobby. She was younger than I expected, in her 30s maybe, with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper gaze. She extended a hand. "Thank you for coming. Follow me." We sat in a small meeting room with walls of frosted glass. On the table sat a folder with my name typed neatly on a tab. "We've reviewed your documents, your evidence," Rachel began, "and we've also begun our own internal investigation." My throat was dry. "And," she slid the folder toward me, "your parents have been officially removed from our advisory list. Any scholarships associated with their endorsements have been paused pending review." I swallowed hard. "Does Isabel know we informed all impacted parties? That includes your sister." I looked away. A part of me felt vindicated, but another part mourned. I wasn't here to ruin Isabel's future. I was here to reclaim mine. Rachel's voice softened. "I don't think you wanted revenge, Eliza. I think you wanted accountability. And that's something we can help with. If you're willing, we'd like to offer you a partnership. Advocacy, mentorship, perhaps even a speaking opportunity at our next summit." I stared. "Why me?" "Because stories like yours change people. You didn't just survive Eliza, you transformed. And young people need to hear that." My mind reeled. Just a year ago, I was in a hospital bed, abandoned. Now someone wanted me to speak from a stage to tell the story out loud. Part of me was terrified. But another part, the stronger, braver part, said yes. I signed the papers that afternoon. When I returned to Haven Ridge, I found Grandma sitting on the porch, wrapped in her shawl, staring at the garden beds. She looked up and smiled when she saw me, but there was a flicker of confusion behind her eyes. "Did you go to the market already?" "No, Grandma," I said gently. "I had a meeting." She patted the bench beside her. "Come tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Rachel, about the offer, about how my name would be listed on a program for the first time, not as someone's sister or daughter, but as myself. She listened, nodding, her hand resting lightly on mine. "You always were meant for something bigger," she said. "I just wish I could remember all of it." I didn't respond, because there was a new ache growing inside me now. The next day, I found her standing in the middle of the hallway, holding her toothbrush and looking scared. "I don't remember where the sink is," she whispered. I led her back, gently, tears burning behind my eyes. After I tucked her in, I called Willow Creek. "I need an updated evaluation," I told the nurse. "She's declining faster than I thought. They scheduled a specialist for next week." I hung up and stared at the wall, suddenly overwhelmed. I was building a new life, but I was losing the person who gave me the chance to build it. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop. At the top, I wrote the Boone Foundation. Underneath, for kids who were overlooked. For caregivers who showed up anyway. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about legacy. I didn't want to speak at panels and disappear. I wanted to create something permanent, real. That same week, I got another letter, this time from a law firm. Boone v. Boone petition for restitution and family-based financial neglect. My heart stopped. They were suing me. I hadn't spoken to my parents since they showed up at that mentorship event. Now they were accusing me of defamation, loss of income, even emotional sabotage. I couldn't believe it. After all they'd done, they still found a way to paint themselves as victims. I showed the letter to Marcus, who was now doing part-time admin work for Haven Ridge. He stared at the paper, then at me. "You ready to go public?" I looked at him. "What do you mean, the lawsuit?" "It's designed to shut you up. But if you speak up loudly, clearly, they won't have a case, especially if you've got the Stratton Foundation behind you." I thought about it all night. Thought about the students who messaged me after workshops, the ones who said I thought I was the only one. I thought about Grandma's hands trembling as she buttered toast. About Brielle, who said I made her feel seen. And I thought about that hospital bed, the sound of my mother's heels walking away. By morning, I'd made my choice. I emailed Rachel. "I'm ready to speak, wherever you'll have me." And then, as the sun rose over Haven Ridge's porch, I picked up the phone and called the local news. The news interview aired 3 days after I made the call. It wasn't a national piece, just local evening coverage sandwiched between a lost dog report and a city council meeting. But it was enough. My voice filled living rooms across the county as I told the story they tried to bury. No dramatic soundtrack, no camera filters, just my face, my name, and the sentence that changed everything. My parents faked my death to secure a scholarship for my sister. And for 2 years, I lived as if I didn't exist. The story exploded. By the next morning, my phone was flooded with messages, some from strangers, some from kids who'd lived through similar betrayals. A few were angry, claiming I was ruining my family. But most were stunned, supportive, heartbroken on my behalf. And among them was one from a name I hadn't seen in a long time, Lacey Boone. Her message was short. I want to talk. Just us. No cameras, no lawyers. I'll meet you anywhere. I didn't know what she wanted. Closure. Forgiveness, damage control. But something in me said, meet her. Maybe not for her sake, but for mine. We chose a park across town. Neutral ground, open space. No walls to trap whatever truth might surface. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on the bench under the elm trees. She looked different, smaller, somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. Like a balloon that had lost just enough air to fold in on itself. "Eliza," she said when I sat down, her voice soft. "I didn't know it would go this far." "That's the thing," I replied. "It did go this far. And you still played along." She picked at the cuff of her sweater. "I thought you were gone. For real. When I read the paperwork when they told me you weren't coming back, what was I supposed to do? Say no? Ask questions? Something." She was quiet for a long time. "Then finally, they told me you were dangerous. That you'd run away on purpose. That we couldn't trust you anymore." That stung more than I expected. "You believed that." "I didn't want to," she whispered. But it was easier than believing they were lying. We sat in silence. The wind rustled the leaves, and in the distance, a kid was flying a kite that kept diving into the grass. I watched it crash over and over, and every time the kid would yank it back up like it owed him something. "I'm sorry," Lacey said, "for not looking for you, for letting them make you into a ghost." "I'm not a ghost," I said quietly. "I'm the one who came back." She nodded, eyes glossy. "Do you hate me?" I didn't answer right away. Because hate would have been easier, but I didn't feel it, not fully. What I felt was older, sadder. "No," I said. "But I don't know if I forgive you yet. That takes time and work." "Then I'll do the work," she said. We didn't hug. There wasn't a tearful reunion. Just two people once tethered by blood and memory sitting under a tree trying to untangle what was left of their bond. Later that week, the Boone Foundation went live. It wasn't flashy. Just a basic website, a mission statement, a place for kids aging out of the system to find scholarships, mentorship, and emergency housing. The Stratton Foundation backed it. Marcus helped draft the bylaws. Brielle became our first intern. Grandma, even as her memory continued to fade, cut the ribbon at our launch event and called me my brave girl in front of everyone. But the biggest shock came 2 weeks later. A letter arrived at Haven Ridge, certified, sealed. I opened it slowly, expecting more legal threats. It wasn't from my parents. It was from the State of Missouri Division of Vital Records. Inside was a formal retraction of my death certificate. Effective immediately, Eliza Marie Boone is recognized as legally alive. Status corrected following confirmed investigative findings of fraudulent documentation. It didn't feel like resurrection. It felt like something quieter. Like justice knocking once, then leaving the door open behind her. That night, I sat with Grandma as she watched old reruns with a blanket across her knees. I told her the good news. She smiled, then blinked. "Eliza," she asked gently, "do I know you?" My throat tightened. "Yeah, Grandma, you do." She squeezed my hand. "You feel familiar. You always made me feel seen," I whispered. "Even when no one else did." She nodded, drifting into sleep. And just when I thought the story had settled, the phone rang again. It was Rachel from Stratton. Her voice was calm but urgent. "Eliza," she said, "we just got a call from a national news outlet. They want you to speak. Full feature, prime time, your face, your voice, your truth, broadcast nationwide." My heart pounded. You don't have to say yes, she added, but I think people are finally ready to hear you. I looked at Grandma, at the walls of Haven Ridge, at the old photo of me in that sunflower blanket, and I said, let's do it. Story 2. Hello, my name is Odilon. On the day I said, I do, my own mother remained silent as I mailed my wedding invitations with hope. She referred to the picnic pictures she shared with my brother as family. She wasn't only absent at my wedding, I was removed from the family tale by her. She knocked on my door with a luggage 6 months later. The worst thing, though, wouldn't be that, would it? Prior to starting. From where are you watching? Have you ever experienced exclusion from your own family? Put it in the comments section. Due to this narrative, it's not only mine, it might also be yours. When I initially mailed out our wedding invites, I didn't freak out. Carefully sealed, handwritten envelopes with gold foil borders. Although I didn't anticipate much hoopla, I did anticipate recognition, particularly from my mother. Twice a week, I checked the tracker again in the hopes of receiving a ping or response, anything. Her name appeared beneath scene and I saw it. She had accepted the invitation. Then there was quiet. I reasoned that she was occupied. She would respond, I told myself. Finally, perhaps she was preparing a surprise, I even persuaded myself. But I knew better in my heart. When you stop making excuses for others, you discover the truth. I was unaware at the time that the quiet was more deafening than any scream I had ever heard as a kid. 2 months prior to that, I became aware that I was no longer included in the family group chat. I wasn't removed with drama, but rather just vanished, as if someone had turned down the volume on my life and hoped I would forget what sound was. I didn't realize how much it hurt. However, being silently wiped was nothing new to me. My mother was quite open about who her son Rose was as I was growing up. She would commend my elder brother Crosby for his initiative, even though he may have been caught stealing a petrol station. In contrast, I might obtain 2 degrees. And this place. That's good, sweetheart. When Crosby left college to join a startup, did you notice the essay he wrote for the corporate newsletter to honor his willingness to take chances? She arranged a party. When he moved back in after that startup failed. He only needs a place to regroup, she reminded everyone while preparing a roast for him. I was the careless one, even though I moved out at age 21, paid all of my rent on time, and never asked for anything. I had received a promotion once at a family breakfast, my initial title in management. I hesitantly brought it up. I'm proud. Let Crosby have this one thing, sweetie, my mother murmured, taking a drink of her mimosa. Give him this one item. By the time I met Reeve, it seemed as though I had been taking his attention just by being there. Other than a narrow-lipped birthday text and a flimsy Christmas grin, I had given up expecting anything from my family. He questioned me once. Why do you always go quiet when I mention your mom? After seeing it early on. I didn't have a clever response. We organized a modest wedding, just a lovely garden next to Washington Park, some live acoustic music, and a small guest list, nothing extravagant. Reeves' folks were overjoyed. I got help with the outfit from his sister. His father volunteered to transport my aunt from Boulder. My mom didn't reply any calls or texts. I sent the save the date back then. The invitation to the bridal shower received no response. She read the official RSVP link when I forwarded it to her. Still blazing, but left there like a cigarette. I was first shown the RSVP system's backend by Reeve. A week ago, she thought it was strange. I recall feeling numb as I stared at the television. We removed her name from the seating list that evening, not because she refused, but rather because she remained silent. The sun rose golden and gentle on the morning of the wedding. Laughing over memories they were creating in real time, the Reeves family bustled around the site, fluffing tablecloths and stringing lights. I looked at the front row while wearing my dress, which was simple and had ivory lace. She was supposed to occupy the one vacant seat. The guests assumed she could be running late, but I knew I had anticipated it before I fastened my dress. Since that RSVP was not read, I had known, since no one answered my calls. since I became aware that my name was in the most recent group chat message. It was older than a year. Nevertheless, I grinned for the pictures. During the vows, I laughed. The bouquet toss seemed like throwing hope into a void, yet I danced as if nothing were missing. And this flawless, vanilla-tiered beauty with sugared flowers was there when I cut the cake. I saw that the slice that was intended for her had not been touched. I packed up that slice later that evening and placed it in the refrigerator with Reeves' aunt's spinach dip and any remaining champagne. I refrained from crying. My cousin Lydie unexpectedly texted me 2 days after the wedding. "I'm not sure if this was intended for you to view." A snapshot of my mother's message from the new family group chat is attached. "Our true celebration will be Mullen's engagement party." Not because I was shocked, but more because it validated my long-held suspicions. My fingers turned cold as I held the phone. I hadn't just been overlooked. Someone had taken my position. Reeve asked if I wanted to go for a stroll as she entered the room. Even I didn't believe it when I informed him that I was all right. I gazed at the ceiling while lying in bed that night with my phone next to me face down. I didn't feel angry. It was the gradual, oppressive pain of being silently removed. How long I had been looking at the ceiling was a mystery to me. An hour or more, perhaps. The room's lighting changed at one point, the chilly gray of a Monday morning fading into that golden post-wedding warmth. As I lay over, I reached for my phone to browse numbly, and Instagram opened automatically like muscle memory rather than checking my messages because I knew better by now. I tapped through Tails hardly blinking. Then I noticed it. Under the same beautiful sky, a perfectly planned picnic is laid out on a blanket with checkered white and blue designs. Plates of sandwiches, sliced watermelon, a charcuterie board with honeycomb and brie. My mother holding a glass of sparkling lemonade without a stem, and Crosby wearing a button-down shirt like he was trying out for a lifestyle commercial were all there at my wedding. His girlfriend Zinnia, who was not yet engaged, was cuddling up on his arm while showing off a teardrop-sized diamond. The post's caption honors the people who are most important. It wasn't until the phone bounced on the carpet that I realized it had fallen from my grasp. I refrained from crying. Hours away, I stood in a white dress, slicing cake and acting as though the vacant chair in the front row wasn't a message. I just gazed at the image that was ingrained in my mind, my family, happy plates full. I got up, went to the kitchen, and automatically brewed coffee. The other room was still occupied by Reeves' slumber. He was not awakened by me. There was a part of me that wanted to sit quietly. Over the years, I had become proficient at it. I used to use fridge magnets to gauge my value as a child. Crosby and I were given this laminated progress board by my mother. Honor roll stars, spelling bee ribbons, and even a picture of him clutching a plastic trophy from a church basketball league were all part of his piece. A scientific fair ribbon for participation, a fading badge of faultless attendance. She once told me, "That's sweet, honey, but Crosby just got MVP last weekend," after I placed second in an essay competition. Then before mine had a chance to adhere, she affixed his laminated photo to the board. She referred to my first A in mathematics as lucky. She said that Crosby was intentionally controlling his load when he dropped a course. I felt like everything I did was a prelude to his big event. Reeve awoke later that afternoon and padded into the kitchen. Still in his t-shirt, his hair was disheveled. Leaning on the counter, he poured himself a cup of coffee and looked at my face. He knew he always did, but I said nothing. "They remembered Odie," he remarked quietly. "They just decided not to come." I nodded as its weight settled like a damp cloak over my shoulders. My fury was not present at that moment, only a token acknowledgement. Numb. I sat on the couch and scrolled once more. My cousin Lizzie, who had emailed me the screenshot of the group chat following the wedding, buzzed me with a message at that moment. My mother had written, "New screenshot, new sting." This isn't how things should be, even though Reeve seems like a wonderful person. Crosby ought to start. No, we're delighted for them. No, I wish we were able to attend. A little adjustment to the family story. One in which there was nothing for me to lead. I felt something when I gazed at the words. Reduce in size. My wedding. The promises. The chair was vacant. The quiet. There had been no misunderstanding. A choice had been made. A line is drawn. I clicked on my photo drafts and dismissed the messages. I have a post saved. A carousel of wedding photos was what I had been planned. The bouquet in the air, Reeves' hand in mine. The cake, the happy visitors. I gazed at the button for posting. I then made a left swipe, pressed the erase button. I next accessed my RSVP spreadsheet, which I had meticulously created with each name, address, and status. I underlined everything. I also deleted it. Anger was absent. Not quite yet. Nothing except silence. Every message from my mom that began, "I don't know if you're busy, but Crosby wanted me to ask," had the same pause I had experienced at every Thanksgiving prayer when Crosby's name was spoken first. I strolled into the kitchen once again. A napkin from the wedding was still on the table. I must have taken one folded one out of the box and just left it there without giving it much thought. I took it up and began folding it once more, first from corner to corner, then repeatedly into a triangle. Where there should have been noise, there was a tiny, silent movement that filled the room. Reeve returned, pausing upon noticing me. "Are you okay?" He did not ask. "Or, you ought to speak with someone. You're free to feel it," he remarked as he sat down across from me. "Simply put, you are not required to remain in it." I gave him a serious look, and for the first time in days, I thought what he was saying was true. However, I continued folding because in reality, I remained in it. It took me a while to realize the reality. Until the deluge arrived, it dripped steadily and slowly like a leaking faucet. First, there was a phone call. Aunt Nadine's name appeared on my screen while I was folding towels in the laundry room. I was hesitant to answer the phone because we hadn't spoken in about a year. I cleaned my hands, gave the dryer a little more hum, and cautiously responded. "Hello, Nadine." She spoke in a timid, quiet voice. "Hello, my love. I thought you should know even though I wasn't sure if I should call. What comes next?" She hesitated. "Crosby has been the subject of your mother's plans." I took a seat on the washer's edge. The heart thudded as if it knew where this was headed. Nadine went on. "In 2 weeks, they have a venue in Estes Park reserved. It is. Audalon, it's a wedding." "A wedding," slowly I said. "Crosby isn't married. I am aware. That's why it was so strange." Vera was already discussing menus and unique cocktails, but she added that it was just in case. Nadine's voice became softer as she spoke, and I could sense the humiliation in it. "Because your wedding didn't leave a legacy," she added, "it didn't really count. Legacy." That word hit me like a stone in my stomach because it was so cold and polished. I didn't answer. I was unable to. I remained in the washing room, surrounded by towels and in quiet when the phone ended. The dryer's hum had stopped, but the buzz in my ears continued to grow. A flashback from 2 years ago slipped in. At Vera's house for brunch. It was only her Crosby, and a few of relatives and myself back then. "Well, you know Crosby is the last real heir to the family name," Vera had remarked while laughing over mimosas. "If he gets married, we'll be lucky, right?" I had shared their laughter. I believed it to be a harmless, archaic jab. It seemed like a plan now, though. I recalled Vera asking me if I would be keeping my last name as she leaned across the table, following my marriage. She had poured more juice and continued, Reeve comes off as kind, but when a woman marries in a way that doesn't bear the same weight, things are different. Then, smiling warmly, she turned to Crosby and said, "We'll have a lot to celebrate when you get married, baby." At the time, I had dismissed it, but now the context was painful. I took a little fireproof folder out of my desk drawer later that night. The deed to our house was inside. 5 years ago, Reeve and I battled valiantly to close on that one. Our credit was overextended at the time. Vera was requested to co-sign till we were accepted. What did she say, Audalon? "Even though I adore you, I can't attach my name to something that might not last. I simply fear that you're moving too quickly." We managed to seal the sale on our own by scraping together what we could. No help currently without a co-signature. I had evidence. It was in my hands. Nevertheless, Reeve returned home from work that evening. The dining table was where I was. I was surrounded by papers that looked like maps of a battlefield. He put down his briefcase and looked around. "What's happening?" he inquired. I gave my phone to him. Another screenshot from Liddy. This one, which was from last week, came from Vera's group chat. She was very proud of Crosby and her writing. The moment we've all been anticipating has finally arrived. Odell was only a stand-in. Reeve didn't shout. Nothing was thrown by him. His jaw clenched with each word as he read it. Then he dropped the phone and turned to face me. He replied softly, "They don't see you. They spot a barrier. You took center stage. Crosby was to be a substitute." I felt something change inside of me as I looked at him. Not melancholy, not even anger. Decide. On my laptop, I opened a new folder, began importing all of the digital wedding invites, emails, RSVPs, receipts, and screenshots. I included pictures of the location, the flowers, and our florist's signed check. After that, I took out the printed deed, underlined my name, and printed it once again. Even though I didn't know what I was making yet, it was going to be sturdy. Even though Vera never phoned me after the wedding, she insisted on holding a Zoom call to stay in touch, so she organized a virtual family gathering later that week. I used an anonymous login, just a dark square with the initials O on it, no microphone, no video. They gushed and giggled over Crosby's impending moment. Wearing a cream-colored dress, Zinnia sat next to him drinking champagne as if it were her rehearsal supper. Vera's voice sounded artificial and sugary, and she was nearly shining. "We've been waiting for this," she remarked with a smile. The celebration that carries on the tradition, the true one. I grinned as I reclined in my chair, still invisible. Let's then assess how realistic you desire it to be. Connected to the following chapter. Crosby wasn't the only one. It was about getting rid of me. Crosby wasn't the only one. It was about getting rid of me. As I stood reheating leftover wedding cake in the kitchen, that notion hummed beneath my skin. It was only a square of vanilla that I had preserved out of habit, not the fancy multi-tiered section. I didn't feel hungry. All I wanted was something that felt authentic. A small amount of the frosting had melted and was slowly falling off, similar to how that day had unfolded. I hadn't previously allowed myself to mentally relive the entire event. Not till today. However, the memory ran itself like an unstoppable loop once it got going. We were inside the reception tent with soft music playing in the background and warm light hung from the ceiling. The tribute video had been long overdue. It had taken Reeve and I weeks to put together. Pictures of us as children, our very first flat. He makes funny videos with his nephews, even the haphazard selfie I shot on the day I was promoted outside the courthouse. When the microphone made the announcement, I was standing close to the head table sipping a glass of wine. Now for the newlyweds, a small surprise. I recall grinning. I felt proud, but anxious. Our love story was in that video. The pause followed, the quiet clearing of a throat, the laptop fidgeting. Apologies, everyone. The USB appears to be unreadable. Zinnia beat him there before Reeve could get up to investigate. Let's simply avoid it. She gave a chirp. Surely everyone has seen enough photos already. They all laughed civilly. The music came back. I felt sick to my stomach. I believed that to be bad luck at the time. It was one of those minor hiccups on the wedding day that everyone had warned me about, like a boot on the verge of coming off. Or a name mispronounced. It's nothing to stress about. I'm not so convinced it was luck anymore, though, particularly not in light of the subsequent events. The reception is almost over. Fran Vera's closest friend rose holding a flute of champagne. Everybody tapped their glasses. As if she had done this 100 times, she lifted hers. "We're celebrating love tonight," she stated in a sweet voice. "And we express our gratitude to everyone present for supporting Crosby's and other family legacies. We are committed to creating enduring homes and upholding the names we are honored to bear." That was it. Not a single reference to Reeve or myself. Not a single recognition that it was my day, my wedding. They didn't even whisper my name. I saw Reeves' parents exchange glances. His father peered down into his glass as if looking for a crack while his mother shifted uneasily. Reeves simply grabbed my hand. He gave it a light squeeze, but his hold held. I threw the USB in a drawer and forgot about it the following day, or attempted 2 weeks later. Reeve took it out once more. We were tidying up and rearranging the wedding's belongings. It functioned flawlessly when he connected it to his laptop. The video was there frame by frame. The transition was smoothly timed by the music. The recording features my voice telling the tale of how we first met. Vera even made an appearance in a few of the early footage, grinning next to me at my graduation and giving me a hug after I received my bar test results. As it played, I took a leisurely seat. My throat constricted. I refrained from crying. I remained still. That was the part of myself she didn't want to see. I muttered the one she used to be proud of. Reeve was silent, but I could tell by the stiffness in his shoulders the way he shut the laptop after that. He believed what I hadn't dared to speak out. I assume Cynthia swapped it out. It's the type of thing she'd write off as merely a tech blip. The type of stuff you can't verify, but you feel in your bones. I spent the next morning going over the seating chart. I had diligently crafted months previously. Vera had been listed at the middle of the family table directly close to Reeves' parents. No special food request, no problem with movement. Nevertheless, she picked a table close to the rear with Crosby and a few coworkers. For the majority of the night, her chair was vacant. One of my cousins later confessed while intoxicated via post-reunion messages that Vera and Crosby had left the ceremony to answer a phone call. There was a presentation for Crosby's new consulting business that involved rebranding. She had stated that she didn't want to lose steam. They assumed you would comprehend. I gave a nod. I always did. I began browsing through my phone while seated at my kitchen counter that evening. I chose picture after picture of happy guests as the cake's centerpieces, which we were never able to cut together. I pushed delete on them one by one. Then I stopped, though. Reeves' sister had snapped a picture. At the moment, I hadn't even realized she had broken it. It showed me in the middle of laughing as Reeves' parents assisted me in getting into my dress. His father was clutching the train clumsily as if it were about to catch fire. His mother was fixing a pin in my hair with one hand while the other was resting on my shoulder. I was staring straight ahead, nor at the camera, nor at them, unaware, just grinning. I left that one intact. Rather, I gazed at it for a while. Then, whether aloud or only in my mind, I whispered, "That day they may have been my actual family." I heard the knock on a Sunday afternoon. Not the timid type that begs for approval. No, this one had a lot of body. Like a person who feels entitled to be somewhere. Anticipating a neighbor, I opened the door. A delivery accident, perhaps. Rather, my mom, Vera, was there. A tote bag on one arm and 2 hard-shell suitcases behind her. She unzipped but draped her winter coat. She had the type of subdued smile you see in the middle of a real estate agent's spiel. "Hello, my love." As if the welcome mat had been spread out for her, she whispered, going forward. "I intended to stay here for a short while. The situation at Crosby's is tight." I blinked. Nor astonishment, nor rage. Only a sinking, empty numbness that crept into my jaw from someplace in my spine. Before I could speak, she was already wheeling her bags in. I didn't stop her. I didn't slam the door, but I also didn't offer tea. I stood as though the voice of someone else had taken the place of my own body. Reeve was seated at the kitchen table as if it were her own by the time she got back from the food shop. She lifted the mug and informed him I brewed chamomile. "Is it still your favorite?" He looked at her in a way that was neither impolite nor kind. Then he turned to face me. I shook my head in the slightest way. She carried a framed picture of Reeve and me into the living room later that night. She grinned to herself and remarked, "I knew this place had potential." "I recall the time I assisted you in obtaining the loan. What a wise choice." Stunned, I gazed at her. No, she hadn't helped, and my throat constricted. Not by any means. 5 years ago, after a freelancing client's payment was delayed and my credit union changed their mind. I was frantically trying to lock in the property and desperately needed a co-signer. I gave her a call. I asked her directly. "I can't put my name on something that could not last," she said. "It isn't intimate. Stability is the key." That loan decision letter had been printed out and stored deep in my file cabinet. Her speech now sounded as if it were coming from another universe. "Did you not assist?" "Finally," I said quietly but firmly. "You didn't." She dismissed it with a wave. "You know how banks manipulate things, don't you?" "That trip included me. I informed everyone that you were creating something unique. However, I didn't have to wait long to learn who everyone was." The bell was rung by Aunt Nadine the next afternoon. She arrived with a manila folder containing old tax documents. Her face tense, her arms draped in a worn green blanket. She entered, gave Vera a chilly greeting, and whispered after me to the rear hallway. "We must speak." She handed the envelope to me when we were alone. She said, "You ought to see this. I assumed you were already aware." Then I noticed her vehicle in the driveway. The folder contained printed communications, including a sequence of correspondence between Vera and a lender with the topic, "Loan Extension Discussion Crosby Property." Vera said, "There it was. For the purposes of paperwork, we are using my daughter's house in Denver. It's basically one of my advantages. I got it for her. The address is within my control. I'd be happy to explain." I pressed my fingertips to the page's edges. "She helped Crosby by using my name," I muttered. Nadine gave a nod. Tight lips. "It's hers, they've been claiming. She's probably done it before." Vera hummed as she washed dishes that evening. As if it were another night in the house she had always owned, I silently watched her from the archway. It was more than simply a home. This was the cause of all of my late-night freelance work, missed parties, and panic attacks during tax season. I owned this house. Earned, fought for, kept up by sheer determination, whilst others would have left. I wasn't raised by Vera. To match her narrative, she created a version of myself, and now her loan papers reportedly. Just as the light disappeared below the trees, Reeve returned home. He didn't inquire. My eyes showed it to him. After putting the goods down, he came right over and embraced me. "Don't let this go on," he whispered into my hair. "Never again." I gave him a chest nod. The lump that's pushing up in my throat. She was later adjusting throw cushions in the guest room when I found her. From the shelf, she took a little square napkin. I was unaware that it was still present. "Do you still bundle leaves in this dumb way?" With a little giggle, she asked. "I recall how you used to use them to adorn every Thanksgiving dinner." I carefully removed it from her hand. "That's the final one," I said. "When I stopped creating room for individuals who never showed up, I stopped creating them." She turned back to the luggage she had partially opened on the bed and feigned a laugh. Something inside of me stopped folding, so I didn't laugh with her. It was developing. She gave me a list right before I decided to let her remain. I was on the verge of persuading myself that it would not be as horrible by the next morning. Perhaps we could put up with one another for a few weeks. I had the impression that there could be a manageable version of this. Then I noticed the list as I entered the kitchen. A solitary sheet of paper neatly folded in half was positioned in the middle of the kitchen island as if it were supposed to be there. I opened it up. I go to Dr. Leonard to have my groceries refilled. Pick up the laundry. Concerning the roof, contact the HOA. I quickly glanced at the bottom line. And while I'm sleeping, please don't use your office. The creak is excessively loud. The happy face was absent. Not a joke. No, just a list typed up if that's not too much. A series of commands. Like she was in charge of the home she had put it there. I said nothing at all. Completely relaxed, she entered behind me and stirred her tea. "Oh, I thought we might divide things up while I was here. You've always had a plan." I didn't answer. She saw my silence as an implicit agreement even though I didn't nod. She always did it that way, seeing my reluctance as assent and my silence as consent. Later that afternoon, I arranged old financial documents for my accountant while sitting cross-legged on the carpeting in the living room. Tax season was rapidly approaching. A black folder from the year I purchased the house was opened, mostly supposing it to be scanned receipt copies. Rather, I discovered a copy of my first mortgage refusal because I didn't have a cosigner. A notarized letter was included. Vera's. It was not a suggestion. It was not a reference to a character. Her statement that she did not want to tie her assets to speculative property was formal and icy. In black ink, she wrote, "She was now sitting in the same speculative house telling people that she had assisted me in purchasing it." I placed the letter on the kitchen counter that evening after supper. Vera hardly gave it a look. Then when she picked an apple out of the fruit dish, she said, "You did well. Why are we resurrecting the past I didn't recoil? You informed the bank that this establishment was not worth supporting. You're claiming it as yours now." "No one questions what I say," she said, nibbling into the apple, leaning against the counter as if we were debating paint colors. So far. Behind me, Reeve had been stacking dishes, but she paused. His silence was palpable to me. I knew he had heard every word, even if he remained silent. Things worsened the following morning. Vera cleared her throat at breakfast. "I've wanted to inquire. Would you be able to take care of Grandma full-time? If it came from you, it would look great with everything going on. In any case, you work from home?" I blinked slowly. "She's in Arkansas." "Yes, but she trusts you and you don't have children." I was not even amused. I didn't even speak louder. "You didn't attend my wedding," I remarked, glancing at her. "You brought me up in your home and now you expect me to tidy up your mess?" She pretended to blow out her breath via her nostrils. "Audilon, you constantly distort things." "No." At last, I began to untangle them. She got up and walked out of the room. No retreat, no apologies, that same feeling of mastery. She always put on armor to protect herself. I stepped out onto the porch while holding a trembling phone. It was a clear afternoon. The air froze my breath. I gazed at the walls of the house I had constructed out of weariness, stubbornness, and a desire to show that I was not in need of rescue. I nearly convinced myself that it would be simpler to leave for a brief while. Then I recalled the flowers, the napkin, and the unplaying video. That seat remained vacant. The pain no longer raged. It solidified into resolve rather than resentment. I entered. Reeve was sitting on the couch with headphones in and her laptop open. I opened a blank Word document while seated at my workstation. I got to typing. Who should I contact about fictitious ownership claims? But I stopped before I hit save. Writing to people who were already aware of her methods and acted as though they were unaware of them was pointless. I didn't have to elaborate. I had to exhibit. I grabbed my phone, launched the voice recording app, and hit the record button. I hit the play button. After letting the recording start, put the phone face down on the table and entered the kitchen as if nothing had occurred. Vera's voice came back to me from the living room, not the one she used around churchgoers or neighbors, the one she didn't say till she forgot people could hear. Audilon was only a bump in our family's history, you know. Vera chuckled. Sharp but feeble voice. Zinnia said that Crosby's legacy is the heritage. We attempted to raise her as a mistake. Correct. It failed. There was giggling. Close, smug, cruel. Crosby remained silent during the video, but it wasn't a defense. Complicity was involved. Aunt Nadine's voicemail from months ago had been buried in my mailbox unopened. In the event that you ever quit believing them, she had labeled it. And now I listened once again, the sound still fresh in my ears. Then again, I remained silent and did not cry. I simply sat on the couch with my knees up to my chest and my phone like a razor on my hand. I didn't have any buzzing thoughts. They were sharpening, settling. The morning was a Sunday. In her own words, Vera had gone out to meet a friend for bagels and early service. When Reeve came back from his run, I was still where I had been 2 hours before. I gave the phone to him. Without asking, he listened. When it was over, he said, "Do you want to send it?" and lowered the phone. I gave a head shake. "No," I answered quietly. "Together, I want them to hear it. Without control, without warning." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew that anger wasn't the way to go. It was about taking back the narrative. I launched my laptop and began creating folders. property fraud, and wedding falsehoods. The recording, screenshots, papers, timelines, emails, and deeds were all included in each folder. I didn't write a revealer. I wasn't doing it for them. I was preserving a reality they couldn't twist. I was doing it to remember how long I had stooped, for those who didn't believe I was important. The monthly family potluck was hosted by Aunt Beth 4 days later. This time I said yes, even though I hadn't gone to one in years. I didn't dress up. Just jeans, a black sweater, and the assurance of someone who has nothing more to prove, no smiles, no cosmetics. The kitchen was filled with baked ziti and passive-aggressive praise when I entered. Vera distributed cookies that she hadn't prepared while she stood at the counter. She said, "It's just so nice to be with people who still value togetherness." In the corner, I noticed Crosby discussing his consultancy business. Zinnia was whispering to someone about a neighbor's divorce, already intoxicated from Aunt Beth's white sangria. I put my phone in the middle of the dining table, put my bag on the chair opposite from Vera, and moved past the buffet table. Reeve, who was already sat next to me, looked up at me and nodded when I hit the play button. Vera's speech caused the room to freeze. Crosby's laugh, Zinnia's, poison. By the time the sound died down, nobody was blinking or eating. Vera opened her mouth but said nothing. She blushed a hue I had never seen her do before. She reached for the phone as if it might change the course of events. She growled, "This isn't how we deal with things in this family." I slowly stood with my eyes level. "You're correct. I'm no longer doing it your way because of this." Nobody gave a clap. Nobody said anything. However, a number of cousins got up and left. Perhaps we all needed to hear that Aunt Beth muttered as she dried her tears and got to work cleaning early. I made no request for an apology. I didn't turn around. The sole sound behind me was the clatter of cutlery, which at once had meaning as I left the front door with Reeve by my side. I didn't feel victorious. For the first time, I felt clean. I wasn't being swallowed by the stillness. It was preparing for the next step. I wasn't searching for a battle when I checked Facebook that morning, but it was there. Vera's post was like a digital ink smack in the middle of my screen. I started constructing a house for our family's history 30 years ago. I'm honored to be carrying on that tradition today from the house where our kids were raised. The attached photo is a wonderful slice of my house with just enough siding and a glimpse of the garden to imply coziness without showing any signs of myself. I read the comments and scrolled. "You've always been so graceful, Vera. How fortunate your family is. Just one read. Legacy. That is the legacy of true moms. Like a sentimental real estate advertisement for a life she never experienced, she branded everything with family ancestry and a loving grandmother. And first, they accepted her. The HOA's quarterly meeting was convened at the neighborhood clubhouse the very next day. It felt as though fate had set aside that date specifically for me, even though I had already put it on my calendar weeks prior. Vera was already there when I got there, chit-chatting with the board president about how long she had been there and how well the area was maintained. She looked at me and grinned in a way I had lost recognition of. The meeting got underway. We read the minutes and exchanged updates. The member comments followed. I held out my hand. I stood up and said, "I want to make things clear. Steady. The ownership of 2429 Glenview Way appears to be unclear. I put a copy of the deed on the table in the community. I used my money, credit, and job to buy this mansion in my name. No legal document names Vera Lewis as the owner, co-owner, or guarantor." I stopped. Nobody spoke up. "Here are the tax documents, the mortgage approvals, and the letter of refusal I got when I requested her to co-sign in case you were confused. I didn't raise my voice 5 years ago. There was no need for me to, for the room had become very silent." Later that evening, I sent a straightforward post to the local forum that included the wedding tribute video, 3 side-by-side photos, and other posts about my property paperwork. Yes, the one she had used the damaged USB to sabotage. The reaction was instantaneous. Whoa, there was writing. "You were the sole one weeding the flower beds and we often wondered why." That video broke me again. How could they be so cruel to you? We appreciate you showing us. By tomorrow at 12:30. More than 70 comments were left on the thread. Individuals related personal tales of moms who claimed credit, sisters who dismantled households that pretended that treachery was custom. It was more than simply the indignation that shocked me. It was the type of insight that comes from experiencing reality rather than rumors. As was to be expected, Zinnia attempted to control the damage via a shared thread. "It's sad when people use family as a pity point," she said. "Your private life is a true reflection of your class." However, below was a response from Vera's old acquaintance. "I was warned not to go to Oberlin's wedding by you. Avoid pushing it. The message is still with me." Then the screen suddenly broke open. There were screenshots after that. There was a leak of private messages. Old allies started to distance themselves. I gave to Crosby's company since Vera said the home was collateral. One church friend even remarked, "I want to talk to someone about it," within a 48-hour period. Her own manipulation was causing her decades-long facade of selflessness and dignity to crumble. I didn't cheer. I didn't claim to have told you. Rather, I got a message from a person I hardly recognized. When I was 7 years old, a woman used to teach Sunday school. I should have noticed it, but I was unaware that she wrote, "The manner in which you conducted yourself following that wedding. That was true grace. I apologize." Something softened inside of me at that very moment. It was toward myself, not Vera. Because perhaps, just possibly, I no longer had to struggle to be seen. Perhaps I had already been helped by the truth. The week passed in a fog. I kept myself occupied by responding to emails from the HOA board, answering comments from neighbors, and even making a lemon bread for Reeves' workplace, as if it were nothing. My family had just been ripped apart by seismic activity. However, I heard it one Sunday night while folding laundry in the living room. It was a knock at something deeper, like a weight released from recollection rather than the front door. The smell of fresh rain on concrete filled the air as I opened the door. Over Vera's shadow, streetlights flashed. This time she didn't have a suitcase. No umbrella, no baggage. Only her brown coat made her shoulders stiff. She clutched her hands as though she wasn't sure what they were meant to accomplish. Her voice was broken and soft. I'm at a loss for words. I remained on the doorway. I didn't grin. "You did it already," I stated each time you remained silent. She blinked too quickly and turned her head away. However, no tears fell. Neither from me nor from her. Our silence said louder than any apology could, and we stood there for a little longer. She wanted to speak with me. Only us. No posts, no cameras. I re-entered, leaving the door slightly ajar so that her words may pass through. "I had no intention of hurting you. The situation just become more complex." I gave a soft shake of my head. "Vera, this is no longer about hurt. Clarity is key. I need an explanation, but I've moved on." She scowled as if she didn't comprehend, as if she didn't think about the math. "I never imagined you would become frigid." I looked her in the eyes. "I'm not chilly. I understand." I shut the door after that. Just closed, not smashed. The non-resonant kind of closed. The sort that puts a stop to things. Reeves sat next to me on the couch later that evening. We remained still for a while, listening to the gentle rain pattering against the glass like gentle fingers. He looked over. "Are you feeling better now?" I pondered for a long time. Tried to find a term that wasn't untrue. Not much better. At last I said, "Just finished." He gave a nod. With one arm, he drew me in while keeping the remote in the other, which he hadn't used in 20 minutes. That's the sound of healing. "Oh," he said. We simply sat there. Don't speak. No TV. Simply breathe, let it rain, and know. Weeks went by. I threw Reeves' family a breakfast one Saturday morning. Pastries were brought by his parents. While I was arranging the supper, one of his sister's 2 children ran right into my kitchen. The young girl, about 7 years old, paused next to me and cocked her head. "It's quite lovely." You learned that from whom I had just folded a napkin, and she was looking at it. Leaf-like. gentle, carefully crept, an echo. I paused. Nobody stayed. Gently, I pressed the napkin next to her plate and stated that. But someone who showed me what it looks like to leave. She was unable to comprehend. She didn't have to. She simply grinned and hurried to get some orange juice. I sat with my diary that night, not knowing how to wrap up something that had ended so many times before. I choose to write the truth instead. My mother didn't just not show up for my wedding. She didn't show up for the person I turned into. But I no longer measure love by who claps the loudest or who posts the most, I said after pausing. Who turns up when no one is looking is how I gauge it. That was the problem of creating a life. You begin to worry about who attends the housewarming vows, milestones, and birthdays. But in reality, it's about who folds next to you, who checks the pilot light, and who carries in your garbage can when you forget. Just to be close, not to pass judgment. Shutting the diary, I muttered aloud. You may eventually be able to pick the family you create. I meant it too. Have you ever shut a door behind you? You finally liked yourself enough, not because you hated yourself. The quiet of those we used to call home can sometimes cause the biggest scars, not strangers. Someone is always eliminated when love is evaluated by devotion to a legacy rather than the one in front of you. Have you ever had your own narrative omitted in order to save the reputation of someone else? Please leave a comment below if this story touched you, and remember to subscribe for more stirring tales like this one. Because it takes more than time to recover from family conflict. Truth is necessary.